The whole idea of a Barbie movie sounds pretty bizarre, and knowing that it will star A-listers like Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling makes this story even weirder. While we can imagine that most actors would love an opportunity to work with Greta Gerwig, there has to be some incentive to get Hollywood's best actors to work in a Barbie movie. In this video, we spill the beans. It's money. That's what it takes to cast Hollywood's best actors in such a movie. What kind of money, you ask? Well, it was recently reported by Variety that Margot Robbie will be pulling in a $12.5 million salary for her work on this movie. And remember, that's a salary, meaning it's a recurring payment. In other words, Robbie is currently the highest paid actress in Hollywood, but that itself is no surprise. She has a ton of pedigree, from having worked on a Scorsese film all the way to working on superhero movies, the kind the director hates. Speaking of the movies that Scorsese hates, Robbie is pretty used to making serious cheddar by now. She nabbed $10 million for Birds of Prey, and her other movies netted her ballpark amounts. As for Gosling, he's earning the same amount as Robbie, even though he isn't the title character. It's impressive that the Barbie production is able to pay out such high salaries to their leads. The cast is pretty stacked, featuring comedy legends Will Ferrell and Kate McKinnon, as well as Simu Liu taking a break from the MCU. So Margot is at the top of the list. What kind of money are the actresses under her making? Well, the only one who's even close to Robbie right now is a far more junior actress. Millie Bobby Brown is set to make $10 million for her work on Stranger Things? Nope, this salary is for Enola Holmes 2, which is coming to Netflix. The next actress listed by Variety is Emily Blunt, who's pulling in just $4 million for her work in Christopher Nolan's upcoming film, Oppenheimer. Fun fact about Blunt's payout, she's earning the same as Matt Damon and Robert Downey Jr. on that movie. Now, you might be thinking that you've definitely heard of actors making way more than that, and you're right. If we look at the total earnings that actors have raked in from movies, Tom Cruise alone scored a cool $100 million for his work on Top Gun Maverick. That's the kind of money that a studio would be happy to gross on a movie. On a similar note, Robert Downey Jr. cleared $75 million on just Avengers Endgame, and he made a similar amount off of Infinity War. There is a difference between an actor's salary and how much money they end up with by the time a movie ends its theatrical run. Actors usually have a choice. They can take a big salary, or they can opt for a smaller salary and a percentage of the box office gross. That's how Cruise got to $100 million. He didn't earn much during the actual shoot of the movie. This is a common practice in Hollywood, particularly at the A-list level. You wouldn't work on a movie that you don't think will hit it big, and if it does hit it big, a tiny percentage of that box office is going to be worth more than any studio would ever pay as a salary. That being said, Tom Cruise might be the last actor able to earn a 9-figure payout from a movie. He's only able to do that because he's Tom freaking Cruise. And there are only a few stars left with that kind of prestige. One of them slapped his career away at the Oscars. Look at Robert Downey's earnings from Endgame. It sounds like a lot on paper, but then you remember that the movie is the second highest grossing film of all time and held the #1 spot for a bit. So, what factors are affecting the earnings of actors these days? For starters, Hollywood is leaning more and more into the franchise model, and that tends to trap actors a bit. Once a studio considers adapting or rebooting an IP, they'll typically try to get actors to commit to a bunch of sequels. That way, they don't have to renegotiate the actor's pay each time. The result of this is that actors often have blocked out segments of their schedule years in advance. Sometimes they may block time for a movie that never ends up shooting. That reduces their flexibility in picking which projects to work on, and studios naturally take advantage of that to offer worse deals to actors. Another factor to consider is the entry of streaming services into the world of movie production. No longer content to just provide a platform for other people's content, Netflix, Disney+, and HBO are among the many streamers who are currently producing their own movies. Apple will be bringing us Killers of the Flower Moon, a Scorsese picture starring Leonardo DiCaprio. That, if nothing else, shows that streamers are real players in Hollywood. These streaming services offer better salaries than the studios we talked about earlier. Leo is set to earn $30 million from Killers of the Flower Moon. And we also talked about how much Millie Bobby Brown is earning from the Enola Holmes sequel. But the downside to working with a streamer is that actors have less of an option to benefit from the movie's earnings. Streaming services don't really have a box office, so to speak. After all, once a user pays a subscription fee, they have access to all the content that the service has to offer. So the streamer can't really figure out which movie movie is bringing in the most revenue. They offer other bonuses based on the movie coming out on time and under budget, but there's less of a potential compared to a theatrically released film. Regardless, it will never not pay like gangbusters to be an actor on the level of Margot Robbie or Leonardo DiCaprio. So if you're an aspiring actor, keep up that hustle. Now, in other news, you'll never guess what motivated Ryan Gosling to take his role in Barbie, making a return to The Tonight with Jimmy Fallon after a decade. The two had a lot of chatting to do about Gosling's upcoming movie. Apparently, the reason why Gosling committed to playing Ken was because he felt that his story needed to be told. What on earth does that mean? Well, it all started when Gosling received the script penned by Greta Gerwig herself and Noah Baumbach, and declared it to be the best script he'd ever read. But the decision wasn't cemented for him yet. That happened when he stepped into his backyard and found a truly tragic sight: a Ken doll, face down in the mud, next to a squashed lemon. To Gosling, this showed what a tragic character Ken is. In reality, Ken doesn't really have a character, in stark contrast to Barbie, who can seemingly do anything. When you think of it that way, Ken is just another accessory, with no more life than the doodads that Barbies often come with in the box. This was a story that, as Gosling texted to Gerwig, that needed to be told. Actors are super creative, and it's weird where their inspirations can come from. Up next, if you want to make the big bucks in Hollywood, sometimes you gotta play dirty. But playing dirty doesn't always end well, as Hollywood producer Ryan Felton recently discovered. He pleaded guilty this week to charges of fleecing cryptocurrency investors of a cool $2.4 million. As if being into crypto hasn't been hard enough already this year. The scam involved Felton convincing investors to buy into an initial coin offering, or ICO, for his new streaming service. The service was called Flick, and he promised that the company could potentially surpass Netflix someday, even though the latter has more flicks than the former. What the investors didn't realize was that they were paying into Felton's personal bank account, from where the man went on a spending spree. His grocery bill consisted of a $1.5 million home, a $180,000 Ferrari, and an almost $60,000 Chevy Tahoe, and around 30 huge ones in diamond jewelry. But you know what he doesn't have? Any notable credits. This is what you get for taking shortcuts. And finally, a quick segment to remember Bob Rafelson. This week we lost one of Hollywood's most tenured veterans. Bob Rafelson was 89 years old when he passed away at his home in Aspen, surrounded by his family. Although he was an Oscar-nominated director and co-creator of The Monkees, Rafelson's biggest contribution to Hollywood was mentoring and giving start to some of Hollywood's modern legends. His encouragement of bold new ideas and rebellion against the old studio traditions gave us such directors as Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, and Steven Spielberg. In addition, Quentin Tarantino and Wes Anderson both call him an inspiration. It's a shame to lose a luminary like Rafelson, but his spirit will live on by his work and the people who carry that spirit forward. That's it for today's video. Are you excited for the new Barbie movie? If you are, is it because Greta Gerwig, the stars, or because of your nostalgia for Barbie dolls? Whatever your reason for being excited for the movie, you do have just under a month longer to wait until it hits theaters on July 21st, 2023. Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.